This year's annual gathering of progressives, called Netroots Nation, took place in St. Louis in mid-July. Next, a panel of Bernie Sanders supporters discusses what's next for them and how to elect progressive leaders up and down the ballot, especially in Congress. This is about an hour and 20 minutes.
All right, let's get started. I want to thank everybody for coming today. We're going to have a question and answer session, as we move into this. But I want to start off first by giving everybody a chance to introduce themselves, tell you a tiny bit about themselves, and then we'll get into some moderated questions, and then we'll open up for all of you. But first, I want to thank you very much for being here, especially at 9 a.m. If you were like me, you were out extremely late last night, and this is really super early. So thank you very much for taking the time to come here and participate. All right, and with that in mind, I'd like to give each panelist a chance to briefly introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about why they're here, starting with Alexandra Rojas from a brand new Congress.
All right, hello everyone. So my name is Alexandra. I actually used to work on the Bernie campaign as a digital field manager on the distributed organizing team. Shortly after, brand new Congress is not an old concept. We've been talking about it for quite some time. The founders, Zach Exley and Troy Cott, this is not necessarily a new idea, so it was a good place for me to go next after Bernie. And just sort of a background, I'm 21 and still in progress with going to school, but Bernie, as many volunteers probably have, has just consumed, and so now I'm into political organizing as well as activism. So.
Great, and then we have State Senator Maria Chappelle-Nadal, who's running for Congress.
Yes. So I'm Maria Chappelle-Nadal, and I was a state representative for 3 terms, and I'm in the 2nd term of my time in the Senate, the Missouri Senate. It was a pleasure to endorse Bernie. I think I did that in perhaps May, a little bit later, because I wanted to have an opportunity to really listen to the issues that impact the community that I represent, which is Ferguson. And I heard the message loud and clear and decided to endorse Bernie because we needed to go a new direction, and people who have been voiceless for so long deserved and need to have champions who are not only in Congress but are also in the White House.
Excellent, thank you. We also have Misty Snow, who is Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate in Utah, and Misty's also the first transgender candidate to win the Democratic primary nomination. Misty.
Hello, as you said, my name is Misty K. Snow. I'm running for U.S. Senate in the state of Utah. I won a Democratic primary. It's actually the first time I ran for office, so a lot of people really were kind of surprised. I entered the race kind of late, and I just kind of against like a guy who started like 6 months ahead of me, but I just felt he was really wrong on a lot of important issues. He was a self-described conservative Democrat, and I felt that the Democrats, we need to actually nominate, people who are actually going to stand up for things like women's reproductive rights, the LGBT community, living wage, talking about reforming our criminal justice system, which disproportionately incarcerates people of color, and issues like that he was completely silent on or like to take the Republican position on. I thought that was wrong. I challenged him for the nomination. I was able to force a primary at the convention, and I just won the primary a couple weeks ago on June 28th. And I'm happy to be here today. Thank you all for coming to see this panel, and thank you all the people who helped organize this and inviting me and other people to it. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And then finally, we have Congressman Alan Grayson, who's running for U.S. Senate in Florida, and was a reasonably early Bernie endorser, including making it very public his position on his superdelegate vote. Alan?
I was the 4th member of Congress to endorse Bernie Sanders for president. And I did so after we set up a website called GraysonPrimary.com and invited people to come not only to vote for the 2 candidates, one of the 2 candidates, but also to explain why. The vote came in at 86% Bernie, 14% Secretary Clinton. And what was fascinating to me was to see all the explanations that were given. Bernie Sanders supporters clearly want to see change in the country, fundamental change. They understand that the system is rigged, and we need somebody as a leader who's going to change that. Thank you.
Fantastic. And I'm Charles Chamberlain. I'm the Executive Director of Democracy for America. We're an organization that started 12 years ago after Governor Howard Dean ran for president. And we started a long-term organization of which, since then, we've elected over 846 candidates to Congress, to office, up and down the ballot across this country. We've raised over $50 million for candidates, and specifically with the Bernie Sanders campaign, we endorsed very early, raised $1.8 million for him. Our members participated in over 115,000 phone banks. Just think about that for a moment. Over 115,000 phone banks, helping them to make 75 million phone calls during the course of the campaign, which is an outrageously awesome number and is one of the reasons why the media was not capable of killing the campaign. And we played a very important part in that we really appreciated being able to do. And it seemed like a perfect way to continue on the work of what Democracy for America is all about, which is about fighting a 50-state strategy of fighting up and down the ballot across the entire country. And so what we're here for today is we're about what are the next steps for the political revolution. We've got some really great candidates. You know, Bernie is no longer a candidate for the presidency. Well, I guess technically that'll be true in a few weeks, but since he's endorsed Hillary, I think we can say that pretty confidently. But we have political revolution candidates up and down the ballot that are in a position to make headway for the political revolution as soon as the upcoming elections that are happening right now. That said, this is definitely a long-term movement. And if you look at, like, for example, the work of what Democracy for America has done, this is 12 years later after a very similar exciting grassroots presidential campaign that motivated and empowered the grassroots across this country. We're still around 12 years later, and we're effective and bigger than ever and doing incredible work. I'm really excited to see what happens as the political revolution moves forward, and I can only imagine, you know, we only won one state, Vermont, and we only had about 500,000 people at our largest point, for example, on our email list. We have a Sanders campaign that won 22 states and 8 million people and 75 million calls. I mean, they knocked on 5 million doors. That's pretty amazing. You just imagine what that's going to mean as we continue to move forward. So with that, I want to put some questions to our panelists here that you know, pretty straightforward. I'd like to start with you, Alex, whether or not, you know, what lesson do you think we can learn from the Sanders campaign as we move forward right now and maybe long term?
I would say the biggest lesson that I learned from both starting off as a volunteer and entering the campaign is to have trust in grassroots organizing and your volunteers. This movement would not be possible without the millions of people and volunteers that stepped up and demanded change. And so regardless if Bernie is not our president, it sets a precedence, grassroots organizing, at least in my lifetime and the generation that was able to watch Bernie and Hillary debate. It shows that, you know, people are powerful. So if anything, it's to make sure that I emphasize the amount of trust that we had within the Bernie Sanders campaign and relied on grassroots volunteers to do the bulk of the work.
Great. So, Maria, you're running for Congress locally here against Lacey Clay, right? Mm-hmm. And what are some of the lessons you feel like you've learned from the Sanders campaign that actually apply directly to the campaign you're running right now?
Well, I love this question, actually, because here's what I would say. Just be real. Be real and, like, talk to people and have a relationship with people who are on the ground and communicate, translate. So something that happened, I think all of you know about it, it's called Ferguson, you know, the Ferguson uprising. So our congressman didn't show up until day 7. That's like 4 days after tear gassing, and that's 2 days after buildings burning. And Congress was on a 5-week break. They take a 5-week break every single August. So I'm dealing with a challenger who is riding on the coattails of his father. Between the two of them, they have served for 48 years in Congress. That's one family that has served for 48 years. So when things went down in our community that was like one of my first wake-up calls, that we have some serious issues that are going on, and we need someone who is present. Not only someone who is present, but someone who is willing to communicate the challenges that people live every single day, and to be unafraid to communicate those challenges. So when I said at the very beginning, be real, like, people want to hear the truth. And despite who you piss off, people are going to be thankful for that. And I'll tell you a quick little, I filibuster, so you need to tell me when to shut up. I learned that lesson yesterday. 39-hour filibuster this year on LGBT rights. And thank you. We got into another crisis, and it's radioactive waste that has been in our community for about 7 decades. And our congressman hasn't done anything. So I was like serving as a school board member and a state senator because I wanted to give extra time to my community that I live in. And I resigned from the school board when I found out the number of cancer clusters that we have in the area that I represent and that he represents. And then all of a sudden he got this wake-up call. Oh, I should go visit St. Louis. There's nothing more pitiful than having an absentee Congress member. You know, he grew up in Maryland. He went to elementary school in Maryland. He went to middle school in Maryland. He went to high school in Maryland. He went to college in Maryland. And then all of a sudden there was a seat that was open in St. Louis, and he ran for a special election. And then there was another seat that was open. He ran for a special election. And then his dad resigned, and then he ran for Congress. So he's been living in Maryland for quite a long time. You know, I think what's important, what Bernie brought to the table, is that you should always be among the people, and you should always speak the truth. And, you know, if you make a mistake here and there, you know, you're speaking the language of the people. And never be afraid of speaking the language of the people, because someone will understand. And we deal with racial issues pretty badly here in St. Louis and in Missouri. And I thought at one point in time there were a lot of white folks who were upset with me for translating the issues that my constituents were concerned with. But what I found out is that they were also grateful for me standing up, because they saw that the silence that we had been living and breathing for quite a long time is the same type of silence that they had been dealing with when it came to radioactive waste contamination, where children are getting sick. Sorry.
No, I wasn't trying to cut you off in the middle of your sentence, but I think one of the things that I hear you're saying it's not just about truth, though. You're also saying it's about action. When you have somebody who's an absentee that's not doing what they need to get done, it's time to have somebody who's ready to stand up and actually take action and do work.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. You know, I think one of the things that really barrier smashing about the Sanders campaign is the way in which it repeatedly, over and over again, broke conventional wisdom. One of the big ways in which I think conventional wisdom was broke was this concept of that you have to run to the middle to get independence. And instead what we really saw is we saw that actually independents want to hear a bold, articulated vision. They're not looking for the middle. They're looking for somebody that inspires them. And really, when you look at a 22-point victory in New Hampshire, that was based almost entirely on that, because it was the independents that gave that 22-point victory. He actually tied in that primary between Hillary and Bernie in the Democratic part of it. So I think that's a really interesting way in which it smashes conventional wisdom. So I think is a great sort of lead into you, Misty. When you think about Utah, there's so often the idea that, oh, well, this is a red state. There's no way a liberal could win. There's no way a Sanders Democrat could win something like Utah. A conservative Democrat should be able to walk away with that race. So, what I have a guess as to where you're going to head with this, but what do you think you can learn from the Sanders campaign, and how is it going to impact your race as you move forward?
Well, I think what I've learned is you just have to really just kind of speak what you believe in. Kind of be honest about your beliefs. Don't try to do this moderate. Believe one thing, say another thing. Just kind of just say, they want honesty from their politicians. A lot of people are kind of frustrated with politics as usual. They want to see change. There's a lot of anger. State of Utah, there's this reputation of being conservative, but it's also a really young state. If you look at the population that's 18 and over, about 46% of them are actually millennials. It's the youngest state in the nation. There's actually more millennials in Utah than Gen Xers and baby boomers combined. But the problem in Utah is that voter participation is really low. 2014 election, state of Utah had about 28.8% turnout rate, is the second lowest after Texas, which had 28.5%. So we're kind of forfeiting our government to conservatives because a lot of times, a lot of Democrats and Democratic voters, they feel like there's not a choice because the Utah Democratic Party for a long time, they've nominated these self-described conservative Democrats who are pro-life, anti-LGBT, pro-war. That's just almost indistinguishable from the Republican. But like, well, they're not quite as extreme, but then they end up losing, by like 30-point margins because they don't appeal, they don't offer an alternative. So I think it's important to really, offer a real alternative to Republicans. And we're going to be, say, as Democrats, we're going to stand up for a living wage. We're going to stand up for women's rights. We're going to stand up for the LGBT community. We're going to give you affordable college. We're going to try to address our racist criminal justice system that leads to people of color being disproportionately stopped, searched, arrested, charged, tried, convicted, and incarcerated. We're going to, fight to offer a new vision for this country and, and look at the future and instead of, trying to think about these old ideas and start saying the things that people, honestly, a lot of people want politicians to say. State of Utah is like the person I'm running against, a guy named Mike Lee, who is actually not that popular in Utah. Most recent poll shows he only has like a 38% approval rating. A lot of people think he's a lock for re-election, but I think we're going to surprise him. I mean, every step of the way, people have underestimated me. A lot of people thought I would never get out of convention. I did. A lot of people thought I'd never win the primary. I won the primary by a 19% margin despite being outspent 4-1, and it's because I had
Can we just repeat that real quick? 19% outspent 4-1, and you won because you speak the truth.
Yeah, the issues I was talking about really resonated with voters, and I feel that, like Mike Lee, he has like $1 million, which actually isn't a lot for a Senate race, but a lot of people, don't think that it's not competitive, so there's no donations coming in. But I think, I think with the tension, a lot of people are realizing, as the Bernie Sanders movement, I think the next step in the political revolution is, we have to start, supporting candidates down the ballot. Like the senator from Utah, has just as much power over your lives as the senator from Texas or the senator from Florida or the senator from Vermont. If we want to really change our dialogue in the nation, we need to get more progressives elected throughout the country, no matter where they're from, because more progressives you have in Congress, the easier it is to support a progressive agenda and to start fighting for the policies that Bernie Sanders talked about. If we want to have a $15 minimum wage, we want to have affordable college, we want to reform our criminal justice system, we need more progressives in Congress. And it really doesn't matter which state they're elected for, because every victory you get is another vote. And I think that's
excellent.
The lesson we need to learn, and I think that's where we need to go forward.
Excellent. Thank you. So sort of continuing on this theme of this conventional wisdom, that the idea that in red states or in purple states that somehow Democrats win better by being more moderate or being more conservative, nobody probably on this panel has probably experienced that conventional wisdom more strongly than Congressman Alan Grayson, because he's someone who's actually elected in D.C. and working with the establishment every day. And what we've seen here is we've seen the entire—
Or against them, as the case.
Right. Right. Well, and in fact, what we've seen is the entire establishment is sort of working against you, much like with Bernie, from the president on down, having endorsed your absolutely terrible opponent. And so, we're not even talking about your general election opponent yet. We're talking about your absolutely terrible opponent in the primary. So I would love to hear, Alan, what do you feel about, you've learned from the Sanders campaign that you're taking and implementing in your Senate race, and how are you combating that conventional wisdom?
Well, first, I'm pleased to see that there's an audience for progressivism. The Sanders campaign is the most successful progressive presidential campaign in the last 50 years. And if anything deserves applause, it's that, right? It gives us hope that the Democratic Party can still be the home of progressivism, and there's been a lot of doubt about that for the past several decades. But it seems that there is definitely an audience within the party for progressive values. of justice, equality, compassion, and peace. Also, there's a consensus within a large swath of the party that the system is rigged and that something needs to be done to change that. The second thing I learned from the Sanders campaign is this. Voters want elections to be about something. You know, we've gotten into this rut here in America where political discourse consists almost entirely of ad hominem attacks. And we end up choosing, we feel, between the lesser of two evils. There's no doubt that both candidates are evil because all we've seen is negative ads about them for literally weeks upon months before the election takes place. And that's simply not what people want. One thing that people will remember from the Sanders campaign is Sanders saying during a debate, enough about the damn emails. People want to hear about what we need to do to make our lives better collectively and how the law can accomplish that. And that is a message that is fundamentally a progressive message. When the system is broken, we need to take the system over and then change the laws, change the rules to make things better. Now, another thing that we've all learned from the Sanders campaign is this. A democracy is not quite dead yet. We're not quite at the point where the oligarchy gets every single thing it wants. What happened is that the Sanders campaign established a new paradigm in the wake of Citizens United regarding campaign finance. And that turns out to be very important. Before he ran for president, Senator Sanders was the only member of the Senate out of 100 of them who raised most of his campaign funds from small donors. For 2 cycles in a row now, 2012 and 2014, I was the only House member out of 435 of us to raise most of my campaign funds from small donors. And now we saw that happen at the presidential level. While the campaign was actually going on, Senator Sanders actually outraised everyone else. He outraised Donald Trump by roughly 7-1. And of course, that was just Trump reaching into his own pocket, so that doesn't really count. So what we see is that there is an alternative way to run for president, for Senate. By the way, I'm the only Senate candidate in the entire country who is raising most of his money from small donors, 150,000 contributions already. And if you want to go to senatorwithguts.com and make a contribution, I will not stop you. But this is what we need, because literally I look around the chamber and the House and I see 434 other members who are largely bought and bossed by special interests, by lobbyists, by multinational corporations, by billionaires, by people who want something for themselves. But democracy just can't survive that way. After the Citizens United decision, I actually was in the courtroom when it was rendered, and I was on MSNBC that night, and I said that if we do nothing, then you can kiss this country goodbye. The Sanders campaign is a sign that we're doing something, that there is a possibility that we can have a functional democracy in this country, and I find that very encouraging. Thank you.
So continue. So, continuing on that theme, Alan, what do we need to do to get the party to get it and to catch on to the critical aspects of the policy fight, the vision for America? So often the Democratic Party makes a decision to say, well, I'm not as bad as look at the other guy, he's terrible, we're not quite as bad, so vote for us. Or in midterm elections, often running as Republican light instead of running on actual real values. They're like, oh, their values are good, but we can do them slightly better by toning them down a little bit, right? Those are losing battles we've lost over and over again with that. You look at 2014, we won races where, it was a bloodbath across the board for Democrats, but the races that we won were the ones where they actually talked about a vision for America. Jeff Merkley, Al Franken, Brian Schatz, Mike Honda, those are the people that won, right? So how do we do it? How do we convince them? If winning isn't enough to convince them, then how do we break through and make that happen?
I think there's little or no hope of that happening. I will tell you that it's appalling to me to see how corporate bought and paid for Democrats completely control the process. And you're right that I've been attacked mainly because I'm a progressive and they want to see a right-wing bought and paid for Wall Street Democrat running against Marco Rubio instead of someone like me. He can't possibly win on the issues, so what they do is they attack me personally. And they're not very good at all at defeating Republicans. I mean, we've lost 14 seats in the last 6 years in the Senate, but they do have a certain flair for getting under the skin of Democrats and finding ways to try to undermine progressive Democrats when we run for office, and we've seen that all around the country. Donna Edwards' campaign is a good example of that, and I could give you other examples as well. I don't think these people are ever going to wake up and realize that what they're doing is foolish and that they've cost us 900 legislative seats around the country just in the past 6 years alone. I think that it's time for a new generation, somebody like Elizabeth Warren, who has the courage of her convictions and understands that the public is with us. You know, I'll give you an example of this. I introduced a bill that now has 175 co-sponsors to expand Medicare to eyes, ears, and teeth. If you poll this, it's astronomical. So why is it that instead of adopting something like that, the party adopts a platform to extend the Ex-Im Bank, which is corporate welfare only for foreign corporations? In the same way that the Democratic Party is now in the process of adopting a platform, and thank goodness for Bernie fighting as hard as he did and withholding his endorsement until he was satisfied with the result, we have a platform of our own in the House of Representatives, and the #1 item on that platform is defeating ISIS. I'm sorry, but in my district where the average wages are $12 an hour, people are way more interested in a $15 minimum wage than they are in quote, defeating, quote, ISIS. And that's just the way it is. So, you know, the entire leadership, Nancy Pelosi aside, the entire leadership of the party has now been corrupted by money. It is completely inured to its own failures, time after time after time. And it's not interested in polling. There was an interesting poll that you all did, that DFA did in connection with the PCCC last year, that showed that when you actually ask the public, where do you stand on issues, on solid, specific, progressive proposals, overwhelmingly the public is with us. The leadership is not with us, and therefore my only hope is to see the leadership replaced.
Right. So basically, you're talking about we just need a complete and total overhaul. We've got to elect new candidates across the board, which is why, you know, Misty's fantastic example of taking on Republicans, and Maria, your fantastic example of taking on bad Democrats, right? And so are you with your fight in an open primary against Patrick Murphy. But I feel like I can feel you want to say something else.
Yeah, I want to say this. In my lifetime, I think the most progress that the party ever made was when Howard Dean was in charge of it. So we needed an outsider. We needed an outsider who could come into the party and to recognize that it's the progressive values that propel us to victory.
Yeah. So you know, we've got two candidates right here that are talking about pushing that you know, in new ways, and a third candidate who's doing it in an open primary. But then we also have brand new Congress, where your actual mission is to replace everybody, right? So can you tell us a little bit about what you know, how are you planning to do that? What, you know, what?
Yeah, so Brand New Congress is a idea that former staffers and volunteers came together with. It's been in the making for at least a decade. So if you guys are familiar with Zach Exley, it was a sort of originally his idea, and it snowballed into what we have today, which is a unified national campaign to elect 400 plus candidates. And the reason we say 400 plus is because we have, and this is for the 2018 elections, we have some existing members that I think should stay in there, as well as others that will jump on board, I think, if we give them a reason to. And so we're aiming to generate the same amount of volunteerism, small dollar donations by funneling people, again, through the online fundraising with one website, and get people excited about running those 400 candidates, and for 2018, hopefully swooping Congress that way.
Is there anybody that's going to qualify as already being good enough, or is it every race everywhere needs to be removed? Alan really wants to know the answer to that question.
Well, I think that there's people like Senator Sanders and Elizabeth Warren who have consistently shown that they fight very, very hard for not only progressive values, but what their constituents really want, what the American people want. So that's why we say 400 plus, in addition to the fact that it's sort of wonky with the way that you know, different cycles work and that sort of thing.
Excellent. All right. So I think I want to open it up for you all to ask questions. We have microphones here. We'd really like you to come up to the microphones, just so you know in advance that the microphone actually will not be amplifying you internally. Those microphones are actually for the videos. So still speak very loud when you're talking to the mic, and don't be surprised when you don't hear it over the amplification. But so anybody who would like to ask a question, why don't you get up and get in line at one of the two mics, and we'll get to you in just a moment. And while people are doing that, I do want to ask, you know, Maria, what is it, you know, you've taken on this sort of mantle of being a Sanders Democrat in your race, and what has that meant? What has that brought? Actually, before I say that, I just got to say I love your breakfast of champions right here with the red can Mountain Dew. That's a sign of a candidate that is definitely working hard when you're starting at 9 a.m. with the Mountain Dew.
And this is my second one.
Excellent. But so what does it mean, what has it meant to be a Sanders Democrat in your campaign so far?
You know what? There are so many people who are on the ground who are running who have been inspired either by Ferguson or by Bernie Sanders. And what I have chosen to do in my Senate life is support many of the candidates who are running on a progressive platform. So before there was this movement for Congress, I'm doing a movement right here in St. Louis for progressives so we can take out some of these establishment Democrats who do nothing and don't show up. So that's what I'm doing. I have my own Bernie movement right here, and it happens to be the legacy that I want to leave here in St. Louis, because we need younger people, inspired people, and people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and do the hard work. So, what it means is challenging your party as often as possible. As a senator, I do that. If there is enough room for a pro-life Democrat in the Senate, there's enough room for a Ferguson Democrat in the Senate and in Congress.
Misty, you have anything to add on that, what it means to be a Sanders Democrat, running in Utah?
Well, it's that. I just, it's about the issues about, fighting for things like living wage and affordable college. Like I said, Utah is the youngest state in the nation. We have more millennials per capita than any other state. So those are issues that really resonate. And also, a lot of people make a lot of media deal about me being the first trans person to get nominated for the U.S. Senate. But I'd also be, if I got elected, I'd be the first millennial in the U.S. Senate. I'd also be the first woman to the U.S. Senate elect out of Utah. So there'd be a couple of other firsts there that I think are probably more important than the fact that I'm trans. I just happen to be trans, just happen to be that way. But I wanted really put these issues out there because I wanted to give a voice to important issues I felt were not getting voiced in the Utah Democratic Party, because nobody was talking about things like $15 an hour minimum wage or women's reproductive rights. I mean, some people told me they voted for me at the convention because I was the only candidate. He's even talking about issues affecting people of color, because there's almost a huge silence in the Utah Democratic Party when it comes to issues affecting people of color. And I was talking a lot about that, and I got a lot of respect for it because I know they're important issues. Even in Utah, it's like 79% white, but we do have our prison population is also disproportionately minority. We have problems with unarmed black teenagers getting shot by police. In February, we had a kid named Abdi Mohammed. He's 17. He was shot by police. He was holding a broom handle. He didn't die, but he was severely injured. He's not ever gonna be the same because of the injuries. So that's an issue. It's not just an issue that happens in the east or the south. It happened in my own city, in Salt Lake City, where unarmed black teenagers are being shot by police. As an overreaction, so we need to really adjust the way we do our policing in this country. We need to reform our courts and our entire system from the police up to the courts. So it's a huge problem. So I want to give a voice to a lot of these issues, because a lot of these issues didn't have voice. But what I find is that these issues really resonate even in Utah, because Utah, there is a lot of people who do care about these issues. A lot of, also young people who haven't really got involved in the political process, but are getting excited. They got excited in March when Bernie Sanders was on the ballot during the caucuses, and a lot of people I think are getting really excited about me because I'm talking about a lot of the same issues. And
excellent.
I'm hoping to get a lot of them to support me in the fall, because I feel like Mike Lee is vulnerable. I feel like we can't beat him because his approval rating is 38%, and June poll is even before I won the primary, I was polling at 37% to 51%, which might seem bad, but that's better. The 2012 Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate in Utah got 30% of the vote. 2010 candidate got 32% of the vote. 2006 candidate got 31% of the vote. So getting 37% in a June poll is really good in Utah. So I feel that we can close that gap, especially if I can continue to build name recognition and fundraising. And I've gotten to get a lot of fundraising kind of from small donations nationally because of all the press that's been focused on my race over the last couple of weeks, and hopefully that'll continue. I would like to try to keep my raised out having to take a bunch of money from corporations like my opponent, Mike Lee, who's something like 20% of all of his money comes from Wall Street. I'd like to not have to do that. I think Bernie Sanders has the right idea. You can do it from small donations. You don't need to go take bribes from corporations.
Fantastic. So that's another great pitch for heading to somebody's website. What is your website, Misty?
MistyKSnow.com. MistyKSNOW.com.
Fantastic. Let's go to questions. First one, remember you're talking to the mic. Please do that, but it won't actually amplify your voice, so make sure you talk loud.
Okay. Well, good morning. My name is Robert Case. How you ladies and gentlemen doing this morning? First of all, I would like to wish you well on your campaigns. But this is my question. How do you propose to make sure healthcare workers get healthcare when in the state, if you work 10 hours a week and the minimum wage here is $7.65, you don't qualify for benefits?
So this seems like a great question for you, Maria.
Yes, so let me just tell you, answer your question and address one of the differences with the establishment party that I'm a member of. It was suggested by our caucus that we file a minimum wage bill of $10.10. And I refused to sign on to that bill. I said, let me just tell you this, I would be recalled if I filed that. So I filed the $15 minimum wage increase this year, and I said I cannot hold my head up and go back home knowing that I signed onto a minimum wage increase of only $10.10. The second thing, I'm looking at your t-shirt. For the last 12 years, I have been a huge proponent of home care workers, and let me tell you why. When I used to work for the Lieutenant Governor, we did an assessment on nursing homes and people who are in their homes. More people of color stay in their homes as they age, and so we're looking at that population of people, the folks who are serving those individuals as well in these pockets. And it is absolutely true that you do not, and your comrades do not get paid a livable wage whatsoever for the work that you do. So I'm guessing you are a member of SEIU.
Yeah.
All right. So SEIU, just in case no one knows this, is the fastest growing union in the country. And they're also one of the unions that have stood up for immigrant and refugee rights before any other union. And what I would encourage and also try to do my best and have done and work towards is ensuring that you do have coverage. Okay. But I also have to tell you that we haven't passed Medicaid expansion in the state of Missouri. And it's costing, like this is money that should come back to the state to benefit you. Like my mom is also having to deal with the challenges that are presented to her because she's depending on the ACA. So I get it, right? But I think that you do, and I will work towards, I think you deserve more. I am working to make sure that you have your own health care benefits, because what you do and what your allies do and the other folks who are in SEIU is the work that people are unwilling to do. It is absolutely remarkable of how you give of yourself to help the people who have stood up for us for so long. And I want you to have your health care, and you deserve to have your health care. And when you see those advertisements of the increase of the minimum wage, ask them, is it $15 or $10? Just because someone says, yeah, let's increase the minimum wage, you ask them, are you talking about $15? Or are you talking about $10?
Okay. Yeah. Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much for your question.
Hi, good morning. So my question is about some tactics that we can use to make especially state legislatures more progressive. One thing that the right has done really well in the past years is taking big money and putting it in small districts where it can have a really, really large footprint. One of the most inspiring things to me about the Bernie Sanders campaign was that they sent money to 21 other candidates by doing tandem fundraising, and that includes some state legislature candidates who, with one email send of small dollar donors from the Bernie Sanders campaign, were able to fill up their budgets probably for the next few cycles. How can we encourage more campaigns that do have large fundraising lists that are able to mobilize the national progressive small dollar donors into small races where that money can make a huge difference? How do we make that common?
I think it's a great question for brand new
My
Congress.
question goes along with yours, so
Oh,
could I just
please.
add it so it can all go together? So
Friendly amendment.
Maria kind of mentioned this, and she might shoot me for saying, but I filed my MEC report yesterday, so it's public knowledge now. But one thing that's happening here in Missouri, and just to talk about Maria a little bit and ask the rest of the panel is, you know, she is I'm the executive director also of NARAL Pro-Choice Missouri, and I'm running for committee woman here in the city of St. Louis. And so since Maria can't spend the money in her state General Assembly campaign, she's been giving it to about 25 different candidates who are my age and most of them younger that are running for committee positions to take back our party at the state level, where Missouri refuses to talk about abortion, to talk about policing in our state, or a myriad of other issues that progressives care about. Maria has taken that money that she can't spend on her congressional race and given it to us. So we not only help her win against an incumbent, but really do that grassroots work at the most basic level to change our party and to change our state.
Great.
We not only have 25 young people running for, you know, party positions, but we have Bernie's campaign manager is running for state rep. Another young man who introduced Bernie at a rally is also running for state rep. So there's a lot of us, and I would say part of us, I think we were all Bernie supporters, but we were all Black Lives Matter activists before we were Bernie supporters. And I just really, you know, I'll cry. Can never repay Maria for what she's given back to our community. And how are the rest of you, you know, taking that kind of leadership?
Well, thank you very much for your leadership at NARAL and for running for an office in the party. That's critical, and absolutely, I would argue one of the most important things that we can do as a political revolution is to recognize that our job isn't just to get elected to Congress or to the U.S. Senate. Our job is to get elected to school boards, to you know, water reclamation district, to you know, offices across up and down the ballot. They have huge impact. You know, if you think about it, you know, sometimes they have a bigger impact on people's lives than a member of Congress can have. So often Congress is just stagnant and things don't actually move forward. And yet constantly corporations and even in corporate Democrats and win in these small town races. And so it's not just that they're having a direct impact on your life, but they're also building themselves into a position to make it easier for them to then run again for higher office as well. So it has a really negative triple up effect that's not great. Whereas instead we can have great people like Maria who can come from state senate and then run up for a member of Congress, or for a member of the House of Representatives like Alan, who can then run for the Senate. That's what we need to support promoting from within, but that starts all the way at the bottom. So this seems like a really perfect question for you, Alex, to expand upon. What else you had to say?
Yeah. So I completely agree with what you said, which is that's why Brand New Congress is running that single national unified campaign to generate that same amount of small dollar contributions on a massive national scale and get people excited about you know, actually taking over the primaries and actually getting people, progressives, into office. And I think the way to do that is exactly that. I think it's grassroots organizing and small dollar contributions. So the getting to work part, though, and the organizing is super, super important in addition to the money that's being spent, because we'll actually be able to allocate a good amount of resources to that. So I think that that's really, really important and really crucial as we expand. And I think also right now, Brand New Congress is focusing on Congress, right? But Bernie has really created local organizing groups in every part of this country. And so what Brand New Congress is about is, yes, we are aiming for Congress, but through doing this, we are igniting the flame of people getting involved at a local level, at a state level, at a regional level, and at a federal level. And I do believe that's what Brand New Congress is trying to accomplish, and will continue to do that by the small dollar contributions and actually electing people like Maria, like Misty, like Alan, to actually represent the American people and actually represent the demographic makeup of the United States.
So the questioner did a fantastic job, Maria, of really promoting your fantastic work. Do you have anything you want to add to what she said?
Maria2016.com.
Perfect. Let's do next question.
Yeah, I think so. I have a comment and question about Brand New Congress. I live in Eugene, Oregon. There is a strong Bernie group there organizing a march on the same day as your kickoff event there. And we've been trying to get a hold of somebody and not getting much response to try and coordinate to make sure we don't step on each other's toes. So I wanted you to know that in general. And also, I'm sure you're overwhelmed with stuff. There's a lot of us out here, who would love to help. So feel free to reach out for more volunteer help to field questions like that. You have a huge volunteer army in waiting, to help.
And actually, just to address that heads on so we're actually we're building our sort of internal infrastructure, and we're almost completely grassroots powered. And so the reason that we haven't gotten back to you is because I'm the point person for that. And just to give you guys a taste of something that we're working on is building an infrastructure within the campaign. It's called the ground support team that we're going to be hopefully expanding, and it's actually going to be able to support the local organizing that is going to take place in Washington, as well as I believe we have 6 other teams, not only in California but in other states already. And so I will be reaching out to you hopefully right after this panel if you stay around to talk about it.
Cool, thank you. And then the question was about, so in Philadelphia, another interesting timing, your local kickoff there is on July 28th. And I'll be there, and a lot of activists, I'll be out there in the streets. And it seems like a fantastic ending event to go to, but in the Facebook event, people asked about this, and somebody commented, oh, this is a local event. Would you all be willing to consider making that a more general event, since there will be so many people from all across the country who will be there?
Yeah, so we actually have 2 events going on. So we have one that's on the 22nd, I believe, and then the other one that's on the 28th, as well as I'll be there, as well as tons of other volunteers that are not only in this room, but are online and sort of scattered. We'll be meeting up in Philadelphia to sell shirts and pass out information, answer any questions. So we'll be there pretty much prior to the convention and all the way through. And so maybe we can talk a little bit after, just to make sure that you can either make it to one of those events or not. We can talk about some other strategies on how to get a general meeting.
I think one of the lasting and maybe one of the impacts that I'm not sure that is really resonated deeply across the board for a lot of people, an impact for the Sanders campaign, which is the incredible amount of grassroots support that actually is beyond the kind of metrics that are often reported on. I mean, what gets reported on is things like, $220 million, raised from small donors and stuff like that, because that's what the DC class is obsessed with. They're obsessed with the fundraising. They're obsessed with that kind of thing.
And the email list.
Right, and the email list, how big the email list and all that kind of thing. But the reality is that one of the incredibly impactful, the most impactful aspect of the Sanders campaign was the way in which it mobilized and engaged and empowered volunteers to work for them and work for themselves in excellent ways. And I think what's exciting about Brand New Congress, and what's exciting about some of the other also sort of spin-offs from the Sanders campaign, and what I imagine will end up ultimately also being a new Sanders spin-off as well, I assume will happen. And then, of course, long-standing organizations that have extremely similar goals like Democracy for America, is that volunteers we've got a lot. There are a lot of people that are really engaged out there that want to do actual things. And we have a Democratic Party that for decades said, sit down and shut up. We don't want to hear from you. We don't trust you to say the right thing. And what's been exciting about this campaign is the way in which it has empowered volunteers to take control and power into their own hands and actually try to drive that change externally. And that's why you can have a media for 6 months tell you your campaign is over, and you can still continue to go on and win 20 more states. So I think that that's a really important lesson.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize, so I had said that I was a digital field member on the distributed organizing team, and I just want to emphasize that point that he just made, is that almost the entire campaign was powered by volunteers, not only in their individual states when it came down to it, but the distributed team coordinated nationally online through Slack, through other digital platforms, and thousands of volunteers. That 75 million phone calls is significant and is the backbone and what we're trying to do and expand in brand new Congress. It's not only people that have been involved in politics forever, it's people that are ready to get to work and fight for the change that they want, and they can be new, they can be anyone. As long as you're willing to step up and get to work, brand new Congress has stuff that you guys can do.
Fantastic. Let's take the next question.
Yes, hi. My name is Medea Benjamin with the group Code Pink. I have a question for Congressman Grayson about Debbie Wasserman Schultz and what the Bernie revolution has done to hopefully decrease her status within the party. And then for Charles, you seem to want to downplay the list and the treasure that is that list. Does DFA get access to that list? How would brand new Congress get access to that list? What are the internal discussions, and how do non-electoral groups get access to this treasure trove? And lastly, I want to say that I think it's a great panel, and it's so interesting that Hillary Clinton's name has not come up yet.
Who? Okay. Just kidding. Just kidding. Alan, why don't you go first?
Sure. My understanding is that there's a new executive director at the DNC now, and the executive director is performing a lot of the functions of decision-making and so on. I think that Debbie still has the title. I'm not sure how much she's involved now in day-to-day decision-making. I just don't know one way or the other. I will say that people tended to overstate her own personal authority all along. And that the decisions that that tended to infuriate certain parts of the party during the past couple of years were not hers alone. That sort of is not. It's not a sophisticated view of how these things actually happen. There are powers behind the throne that are not visible. Obviously, since she was in charge of the party, she's the person people see. But to personalize it the way that it's been done because of decisions that were made regarding debates and so on is to oversimplify the actual process by which those decisions are made.
So, Congressman, I think that's totally right, but at the same time, I want to push back a little bit and say that you look at somebody like Governor Dean when he was there, who constantly fought with the party and did excise real power when he disagreed with them. You look at the 50-state strategy, where you have the notorious meeting with Rahm Emanuel and Chuck Schumer, where Rahm walks out of the room pissed off and says "fuck you," right? And what was Howard Dean's response? Howard Dean's response was, I don't care. I'm still going to do the 50-state strategy. I'm not giving you any money, and kept doing it. So, I mean, there is something to be said for the leadership in that role, even if, yeah, of course, no question, it's hard. You're fighting against the establishment, and she didn't take that role. She just stuck with that. I mean, you would agree with that, right? I assume, or?
I agree. The party under Howard Dean was not the same as the party under Debbie Wasserman Schultz. We can all agree on that. Howard Dean was more willing to assert himself on matters of principle. It's just a completely different style and a sense of what the position really means. Debbie has decided to excel in fundraising for the party. Some people think that that's a good idea. Some people think it's utterly pointless because we have no message that that people want to hear. So what do? You buy a lot of ads and they're just drivel. But the answer is absolutely. When Howard Dean ran the party, running the party really meant something very, very important. And none of us can forget the principle involved, that when you run a real Republican against a fake Republican, the real Republican's going to win every time. That's a lesson that still hasn't been learned by the Democratic Party.
Maria, I see you chomping at the bit to say something.
Yeah, I'm not going to address that portion of it, but I am watching that race in Florida very closely. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz has something in common with my opponent, which is, one, she supports the payday loan industry. I don't know if you've read that New York Times article recently, but in Missouri we have more payday loan operations than Walmart, Starbucks, and McDonald's put together. And that is because because of people like my opponent and others like Debbie Wasserman Schultz. But the other thing is neither one of them want to debate in front of the people that they represent. And especially, and I don't know how many years she's been in, but I know here in Missouri, when you have had an incumbent family for 48 years, the people do deserve to have an open debate.
Yeah, just to address the magical email list, I think it's obviously it's really crucial, right, that we know that. But at the same time, the way that I view it too, and because Brand New Congress does not have that list, we have to earn every supporter that we get now. We actually have to go out. So the reason why we're going to be in Washington, the reason why we're going to be in Philadelphia is because we're doing a 100-city tour to actually go out and talk to people and find out what they're saying. And so it's obviously would be nice if we had such a big email list already. It would certainly help with our fundraising right now. However, I'm excited to work with Grassroots and to work with local organizers to find out new ways to talk to voters and really, really understand and get to know everyone.
I think something that regularly, to also give my perspective on the answer to that question, I think something that regularly happens among the political professional class is that we literally talk about it like it's a list, and it's not. I mean, I get, obviously, it literally is, but it's people. There are people attached to those email addresses. And so the fact that Sanders has 8 million people on his list, that's fantastic. But those people are out there, and if we're talking to them and we're giving a bold vision and real leadership and we're actually doing the real work, then in so many ways those people will help find you. They'll help find us, and they'll come to us. And certainly it helps, you know, the more that Sanders can highlight people that are doing that work, the better. And you know, we certainly hope to continue to partner with Sanders as we move ahead. And my hope is that some of that means that we get that exposure that also helps bring those people in our door. But the bottom line is that there are people, and that people are inspired by real vision, by real action and effective work. And if you're doing those things, they're going to come to you. That's why Bernie Sanders has got over 12 million votes, even as he was being fought at every step of the way by the establishment in every possible way they could. Let's do the next question.
Sure. In 2014, 60% of state legislature seats were opposed, and 40% of them were completely uncontested. I live in Springfield, Oregon, and in the past 3 races, there were 26 races. 18 out of the 26 were unopposed. Only 8 times out of the 26 were people running. Don't act too surprised, because in Ferguson, Mayor James Knowles III, you could have had voter turnout at 100%. It wouldn't have mattered because no one ran against him. As far as addressing these down ballot spots, I work for Nation Builder. I came there because I started a website called runforoffice.org. It was with Sunlight Foundation, then UC Berkeley, and Portland State University. I was simply sick and tired of the elites in the Democratic and Republican Party holding on to that information for how to get on school board, how to get onto all those special districts. Democracy for America, where were you? I mean, 18 out of 26 races, no one's running. You're not developing the bench. And in all those communities, in St. Louis County, I just did the research for it. So the entire county is now on our site. You can enter your address, see what you can run for. 4 or 5 of your municipalities don't even have a website. And there's also around 5 or 6 positions of publicly elected marshal, which is like a publicly elected sheriff. You guys don't run for those positions either. So we've got a lot of work to do down ballot. I'm a big proponent of open data, right? So I'm not going to give this to any specific group. It should go to everyone. I'm also not entirely comfortable, even though I'm a fan of Brand New Congress, that you guys get to pick these candidates for Congress. What's up with that? What are your metrics for that?
So in terms of the vetting process and what an ideal candidate looks like, we are actually going into the community. So if we're looking at congressional districts, we're going to talk to the people that actually they represent, and it's more sort of like a nomination than vetting process. It's not, you know, Brand New Congress picking. There is going to be a final decision-making process, but it's after long vetting and long talking with the community members that identify those people. And it's not only career politicians, it's actually members of the community that you meet, we don't even know of yet. Yes.
I'm more concerned with how you make the choice and who's going to get that money and the backing of your group. I'd also like to say that it happens in each and every one of your districts. All I do every day long is look at election results and develop these lists of elected positions. The same goes for you, Congressman Grayson. You know, those people that you neglect to get on the ballot, those are also your voters. And if someone's running for school board, you could probably count like an extra 50 votes for those. The bottom carries the top. Every 4 years, there's a new AstroTurf operation of the Democrats. It's bullshit. It's got to stop.
Okay, so great questions, and but I definitely want to be able to give other people a chance to ask questions. So thanks for sitting down now. But great questions. Let's give people a chance to answer.
Yeah,
Maria.
and I would love to. You know what? Let me just tell you just a quick stats. 36% of the people who live in the 1st Congressional District live in poverty. 60% of the children who go to public school are on free reduced lunch. The African American community is currently experiencing an unemployment rate of 17%. When you run for office, let me tell you about the colorization of campaigning. When you are black and when you are a woman, and if you're both like me, you don't get support from the party, okay? So, and here's the other thing. When you look at how people are doing things through, I'm not accountable to Mayor Knowles. First of all, he's Republican, and I don't even know how he got elected. But let me tell you, it's my turn. Let me tell you. Here's what's about to go down. There are people, especially after Ferguson, who have woken up, who are challenging the system. The people who I'm supporting who are running for at lower ballot, it's because they have been inspired. So instead of yelling at us, realize that because of the death of a young black man and several deaths of young black men and young black women, we are inspired and we are engaged and we are waking up and we're saying we're not going to tolerate this anymore, and it is our responsibility to help those who want to work from the grassroots and go on and support every other person who is out there who doesn't have an opportunity. So I do want to push back. In fact, here's our problem. And it's still my turn. Here's our problem. We have 5 people who want to run for mayor in Ferguson, and that's a beautiful thing. We have people who are running against each other who have both been inspired in the same seat and multiple seats. I'm trying to figure out who am I going to support, or am I supporting both? In a couple of races, I'm supporting both people because they're all inspired. This is not going to be perfect. You are not perfect, and I am not perfect. Neither one of us and nobody in here. We're all children of God. What we should be doing is to help people who have no voice. And take the energy and the passion that you have and look at those numbers as you do and help build a strong party and oppose the establishment at every single turn that you have. Oppose the party, oppose the establishment. But we do have our problems just like y'all do. Nobody's drawers are clean, okay?
So speaking for DFA on the aspect of where you're asking us, bottom line is that, we've worked hard across the board to elect candidates up to the ballot. And I'm not going to be defensive here. We can't support everyone all the time. We can't force people to run in districts, and we can't require somebody. We can't say, you have to run. If you don't run, then we can push it, and we do it, and we try to empower people as much as possible. And we've been very successful at it. But think about the scale of what you're asking, however. When you think about state legislative races, there are over 3,000 state legislative races in a year. We have a cycle budget of $10 million. There's only so much that we can actually be able to do for each and every candidate. We encourage people to run as much as possible. We look for candidates that are actually running for real and fighting hard, even if they're in a district that might be very difficult. And we very much encourage people to run for lower levels of office, and we've been very successful of it. In fact, one of the things that has really set apart DFA of other organizations is the fact that as a national organization, we do things like Maria Nadal. We supported her as one of our our very first Dean Dozen candidates way back in 2004 in her race for state representative of Missouri. Nobody else was supporting Maria. We did it. We went out there and we worked our absolute butts off it, and then we've continued to support Maria as we've gone along year after year. And the reality is that while there are not enough stories like that, because I would love to be able to give you 3,000 stories like that, I would love to be able to tell you that we convinced somebody to run for the mayor of Ferguson to do that. I would love to be able to tell you that we can fill every school board race, every state senate race, the reality is that is extremely, that is a very, very big lift. And it's one of the exciting things that when we recognize that that's what we're pushing for and that's what we're trying to make happen, it's way more likely to happen. But it also takes a lot more than just a few people, the staff in Burlington, or the resources we have to make it happen in 3,000 seats, and that's just state legislatures.
It's bigger than one organization. It's people in this country having to get up in their local communities. So just if brand new Congress is anything, and if anyone running on a progressive values is anything, is to inspire people that don't have those resources to get up, start organizing and filling those seats instead of waiting for someone to come and do it.
Right, and we recognize that it's more than one organization. That's part of the reason why Democracy for America is hosting a panel that includes somebody that potentially and conceptually is a competitor of ours and saying support and be involved, because we know there's room to be involved in a lot of places. You've already asked a bunch of questions. I'd like to move on to the next person.
Hi, my name's Cheryl Krause. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. Not a place where we have trouble with Democrats per se. We have many, many Democrats. But if you talk about like the more versus better, we've got more. We need better. I am actually, God help me, I am a member of the Kings County Democratic Committee. I have that much power, just an iota over zero. And one of the things that incumbent Democrats, who are not necessarily friends of progress, use very, very much to hold on to their power is the gerrymander. And I was wondering if you guys could address these structural obstacles that we face in insurgency, if you want to use that word.
Alan, do you want to take that as somebody who's actually in the structure and still trying to challenge it at the same time?
Are you referring to gerrymandering specifically, or what do you mean by structural challenges? Is that broader than that?
Well, there are certainly structural challenges within the party, but no, I'm referring specifically to the gerrymander. I mean, both parties love it because it helps them keep their incumbents incumbent.
Right, that is correct. We have the last primary in the entire country in Florida, and that's because it favors incumbents. It's the Incumbent Protection Plan. Mm-hmm. But with regard to gerrymandering, you're right. I mean, I'm hoping that at some point there'll be some new Supreme Court case before a liberal Supreme Court that will end it once and for all. I think that gerrymandering is unconstitutional. I think it violates the Equal Protection Clause and the clause that actually requires the federal government to guarantee a democratic a government in every state. There's a separate clause that does that. I'm very committed to this. We had a tremendous success in Florida. It took years to get through litigation of it. But we had something called Fair Districts Florida in my state. If you look up their records, you'll find that the first 5-figure check that they received for their effort was from me. And I, right from the beginning, was committed to see that happen, even though I have a blue district, and inevitably my district got watered down when it went into effect. But what we need is we need the government to reflect the values of the state. We reached a point in Florida where, even though Florida is the ultimate purple state, we had 19 members of Congress who were Republicans and only 6 after the 2010 election who were Democrats. That was partly a function of money, but it was dirty money, but it was almost entirely a function of gerrymandering. They packed huge numbers of Democrats into a tiny number of districts, and they got away with it. And the same thing is true in Pennsylvania, where the current delegation is, if I recall correctly, 12 Republicans and 5 Democrats in a state that hasn't gone Republican in a presidential election for more than a quarter of a century. In Ohio now, the count is 10 Republicans and 4 Democrats. they've created a situation where the whole country is so badly gerrymandered in Congress that we have to win nationwide by 8 points before we get to even in Congress. And that is almost entirely a function of gerrymandering. Yeah. So it's a horrible situation, and it needs to end. One of the things that's been done is, in Florida, we put it on the ballot. Fair Districts Florida was a constitutional effort to amend our Constitution to prohibit gerrymandering. It took roughly $8 million from start to finish to accomplish that, and we needed over 1 million signatures just to get it on the ballot. There are other states where the same kind of effort can be made. Not every state has referenda or initiatives like Florida does. But where you do, it's something that needs to be done, because the power structure will never, ever, ever reform itself.
Yeah,
and the result of that is we have a situation now where the voters don't pick the elected officials are picking their voters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's right.
The point I was trying to make, though, is that Democrats, where I come from, Democrats love the gerrymander. We have a cozy arrangement between our state assembly and our state senate, that the Democrats get the assembly and the Republicans get the Senate, and everybody's happy.
Yes, that's definitely a problem. I want to thank you very much for your question. Unfortunately, we're out of time, so I'm afraid we're not going to take any more questions. But I really want to encourage those of you that still had questions, even follow-ups from your others, to make sure, we're all going to be here for a few more minutes. Don't hesitate to come up and chat with us about your questions. I do want to give each of our panelists a chance to sort of say a real quick closing statement. If you can try to keep it in 30 seconds or less, would probably be good. But if there's like one burning thought you want to leave us with coming out of this, let's do it. And let's start at the end. Alan, why don't you go first?
Go Team Blue.
You don't want to at least say your website name again?
SenatorWithGuts.com. You'll never be able to forget it, no matter how hard you try.
Misty?
I want to thank everybody for coming here. It's a really nice turnout. I was, again, thankful for the opportunity to come be a part of this and for the chance to speak to you. I encourage all of you to check out my website at mistyksnow.com. And if any of you would like to donate to help me, get some more resources, I would greatly appreciate it. As we saw with Bernie Sanders, don't ever underestimate the power of small donations in large numbers.
Excellent, thank you. Maria?
Don't be silent. Speak up. There are oftentimes people want to put us in a box as progressives, and they want to label us. They want to say that we can do this, we can do that, when and where and how. Reject that. You have an obligation as a progressive. Speak up, stand up, and fight as hard as you can with every single tool that you possibly have in your corner, in your tool set. Use it. I am running for Congress. I am running against an establishment opponent who takes money from the payday loans from the rent-to-own industry, and also is someone who does not champion the same kind of policies that Elizabeth Warren does. My website is maria2016.com, and I'm asking you for your help.
I echo everyone's sentiments on stage so far, and I'm very humbled to be on stage with so many great senators and people that are running for Congress right now. The message that I want to leave is to believe in yourself and never give up. And anyone, including a 21-year-old from Connecticut, including a 16-year-old from Missouri, anybody can get up, stand up, whether it's running for office or getting involved. So if anyone wants to get to work, you can go to www.brandnewcongress.org/work to check out a local leader kit so you can start organizing in your community right now. To sign up and contribute to our website, you can go to www.brandnewcongress.org to learn more about our plan and sign up for an orientation call to talk to our volunteers. So thank you so much again, and look forward to hearing from anyone that has questions.
Great. Before we go, before we go, I think if there's one thing that I want to say about what we're learning here today is the political revolution it existed before Bernie Sanders. He helped bring it together in a way that was really strong and really, really powerful, and helped prove to the country that there are at least 46% of the Democratic Party, 12 million votes, 22 states that absolutely understand how critically important it is to stand up for bold values and bold issues. But this isn't the key to it not going away, is to not let them take it from us. There is no question that we have a political establishment, we have a corporate establishment, we have a country that wants to tell us and keep us down and tell us that this campaign is over, this revolution is over, and they're going to say it every single time we lose over the next year, over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years. They're going to say it every single time, because what they're going to look for is they're going to look to count up our losses. And what I want to say to all of you is that we move ahead, we need to be counting up our victories, because the victories are what matters. And if we're going to fight everywhere, that's how we can win everywhere. But in fighting everywhere, that means that we're not always going to win. So we've got 3 fantastic candidates on this stage, and I hope that every single one of them wins. Absolutely. And I think every single one of them has a chance, right? But if they don't, it is not over. It is not over, because we have candidates and people running across this country on our values, on our issues, on our vision, and they need to be supported, and that will be true tomorrow. That'll be true a year from now. And if there's anything I can say as being the executive director of Democracy for America that started 12 years ago, they'll be there 12 years from now. So let's make sure we keep this political revolution going and that we fight as hard as we can. With that, thank you for being here.